Hello, welcome to another episode of History in the Dark. I am your host, Darkness the Curse. And before we begin, as always, thank you so much to my generous patrons, my British rail critics, and of course my underwater train finders. You are the reason why this content remains a speed demon. And today, we're going to discuss cars again, which we don't do super often around here, but I've been getting some requests for more cars lately, and since I've made a few videos in a row about fast things, I decided to keep up the trend, and we'll talk about the fastest cars ever. But I had a couple rules this time. I decided not to get weird and experimental on you in this particular video. I will probably make another one in the future with that element. This time we're going to stick with street legal verified records when it comes to cars. And that's very important for me to stress. Because outside of this list, there are some cars that are believed to be faster and capable of faster speeds, based on what the manufacturer is saying, but those claims aren't verified by outside sources. These are. And I wanted to stick with street legal because, well, maybe you would be interested in purchasing one of these cars. Because you want to go fast, except not really, because that would break speed limits in basically everywhere that isn't the Autobahn. Also, most of us will never be able to afford any of these vehicles because they're all high-performance sports cars, and unless you're a successful business owner or a YouTuber way more popular than I ever will be, we don't have the money for this. But I can dream! Here's 5 of the fastest cars ever. The McLaren F1. Now, when you first read the title of this, you probably expected this to be on the list. The F1 is kind of notorious for being just, well, first of all, a gorgeous-looking sports car, but also outrageously fast. It was designed and manufactured by the British automobile manufacturer McLaren Automotive, and it's powered by a BMW S70/2 V12 engine. They were in production between 1989 and 1998, but they're pretty rare. Only 106 were ever produced. So, even by luxury car standards, it's pretty astonishingly difficult to get a hold of one these days, and would cost you a pretty penny, I would imagine. It was designed to be lighter and a lot more streamlined than many of the modern sports cars of its era. And it actually had an extra seat when compared to other sports cars too, but the driver's seat was located in the center and slightly forward, where the 2 passengers sat in the back behind, which gave the driver much better visibility when compared to a conventional layout. It was originally conceived by Gordon Murray as the ultimate road car. When it was released to the public, reviews of the few that were able to drive one were, well, astonishing. The British car magazine Autocar stated that the F1 is the finest driving machine yet built for the public road. The list of past and present owners of this vehicle reads like a list of richest people ever on the planet, quite frankly. Elon Musk, Rowan Atkinson, Jay Leno, and George Harrison are just a few names that appear on lists of people that have owned and driven the McLaren F1. But how fast did it go? Well, it set its Guinness World Record on the 31st of March 1998. Its prototype, the XPF, had its rev limiter modified and raised to 8,300 RPM. That allowed the prototype to reach an average top speed of 386.7 kilometers per hour. That's 240.3 miles per hour. Now, even though that was considered an official record, it's probably important that I mention that none of the actual sold vehicles, the non-prototypes without the modification, reached a top speed that was above 340 kilometers per hour, 211 miles per hour. But it was still astonishingly fast, and retained that record for a little over 10 years. Whether or not it still remains the fastest vehicle on the road, well, it doesn't, but the F1s are still highly sought after even to this day. Probably one of the most famous sports cars ever made. The Bugatti Veyron. Veyron. I think it's Veyron. The Bugatti Veyron EB 16.4 is a mid-engine sports car that was designed and developed in Germany by the Volkswagen Group and Bugatti. but it was manufactured in Molsheim, France, by Bugatti. It's actually named after the racing driver Pierre Veyron. It has a very sleek, modern design, very fitting for the era in which it was produced, which was rather recent. It was in production between 2005 and 2015. This thing is a two-door coupe with a quad turbocharged WR16 engine. The power output is somewhere in the neighborhood of 987 horsepower. And though I'm feeling like I'm going to be repeating myself a lot with this, it rides astonishingly smooth and is easy to control as long as you don't, go very fast, because high speeds and you're not ready for it will kill you. But it could go very fast, yes. It was designed by Josef Kaban, and in 2005 it broke the F1's record, which was recorded and verified by German inspection officials on the 19th of April of that year. This thing went 408.47 kilometers per hour. That's 253.81 miles per hour. And the Veyron is actually the most produced vehicle on this list. It's a little more attainable than the others, but it's still gonna cost you just so much money. Such an astronomical amount of money. Like more than I make in a year. The SSC Ultimate Aero, specifically the TT version. Another mid-engine sports car that was produced by SSC North America, which was formerly known as Shelby Supercars. They were in production from 2004 to 2013. The TT version was built in 2009, though. It was given an increase of power of 15%. In order to prevent it from overheating, they had to actually increase the airflow to the engine by 20% with carbon fiber technology. And the nose was redesigned to make it more aerodynamic, and the interior was upgraded slightly. It was also given a quite hilarious aero brake system, which is just a spoiler, but it rises up 200 millimeters when the brake is pressed in order to help you slow down. Look, at that point, just give the car a parachute or something, I'm just saying. The RTT was simulated and tested at NASA's Langley Research Center. We're getting all scientific over here. And 6 months after that, it set a speed record of 412.28 kilometers per hour. That's 256 miles per hour on September 13th, 2007. Those results were later verified by the Guinness Book of World Records on October 9th. The Bugatti Veyron 16.4 Supersport. Wait, what? No, I just talked about... No, you can't be on the list twice! Well, okay, this is hard to explain. The Bugatti Veyron that broke the initial record in 2005 was the EB. This is the Supersport, which, while technically still the Veyron, is not the same car at all. The Supersport is faster and more powerful, and production was limited to only 30 of these. Its engine power output was increased to 1,184 horsepower. I know of locomotives that have less horsepower than this car does. Technically, if you purchase it, it's electronically limited to only hit a speed of 415 kilometers per hour, 258 miles per hour. Only, yeah, right. And that's to protect the tires from disintegrating. Oh, okay. But for the record, it would have to go faster than that, so naturally that limiter was removed. In fact, 5 of the 30 had that limiter turned off. Then, in 2010, Pierre-Henri Raffanel drove that version to a speed of 431.072 kilometers per hour. That's 267.856 miles per hour. A ludicrous speed for them to go. Though it's worth mentioning that those 5 that had those limiters turned off had them later turned back on when they were sold. So even if you bought one of these, you would have to turn the limiter off to ever attempt to reach the record again. And you probably shouldn't on a regular road. I can't stress that enough. Drive safe, people, okay? But it's not the fastest. Not anymore, anyway. The Koenigsegg Agera RS. This sports car was manufactured by Sweden, specifically the company Koenigsegg, which I'm hopefully saying correctly. The original version entered production in 2010, and it was actually named Hypercar of the Year that same year by Top Gear magazine. But the version we really want to talk about is the RS edition, and it was first unveiled at the 2015 Geneva Motor Show. The RS is another evolution of the Agera, already building upon the previous version, the R, implementing a lot of new technologies. It's designed to be very lightweight and has track-optimized technologies. It's actually billed as the ultimate track tool. It produces 450 kilograms of downforce at 250 kilometers per hour. It has a 5-liter V8 engine that has a power output of 1,160 horsepower on regular pump gasoline. What? But I'm not done, because there's an optional 1 megawatt package that increases that power to 1,341 horsepower. Only 27 of these were ever built in the end. And if you could ever afford this car, just know that you might not be able to afford the gas, because it gets 11 miles per gallon. No, seriously, 11! That's in the city. It gets 18 on the highway, so that's great, thank you for that. Anyway, the 1 megawatt edition of this thing was driven by Niklas Lidja to a top speed of 447.19 kilometers per hour. That's 277.87 miles per hour. That was independently verified by Race Logic. So, as of now, based on what I know, this car retains the world record for the fastest street-legal vehicle. Like I said, there are other experimental cars that can go faster than this, but you can't drive those on the road. This one you can, which you'll never be able to afford it, but you could, in theory, if you could afford it, you know. And the gas, which you also can't afford. I feel like these cars are just like a massive flex, you know, it's just kind of one of those things. Like, I drive a Chevy, okay, I can't address this kind of, the amount of money that I would need to even consider spending some on this. I just can't even fathom that. Okay, I think we're done here. And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater trade finders. Thomas Ward, Sumdu267, Orange Glass, Royal Hudson 2860, Lord Hawk 444, Benjamin Owens, Penta Kitsu 131S232, Mr. Black Rose, Josh Johnson, Metal for Life Guy, and Zach A1, Arthur Roy, DM Tribal Typhoon, Tommy Rossini, Lord Captain Von Thrust III, Joshua Long, Alaric Jaspers, Brian, Jack Carson's Railroad Videos, Major Klutz, Hayden DeGrow, Master of None, Dr. Racer 78, Crystal Morgan, Ohio Trucker 1, and Amtrak 2023 Productions. Till next time, this is Darkness and Abidjwala Farewell.